We have pretty good news today from Bakhmut, because Russians got pushed further away from the city center. At the same time, Zelensky issues the final warning to the Russian army to leave Ukraine before they are completely destroyed, in the anticipation of Ukraine's counteroffensive. And because of this, for the last several weeks it has been already reported that there is an increase of Russian soldiers who are calling Ukrainian hotlines and asking how to properly surrender. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude, and let's go straight to the point and see some more ridiculous cringe material. And today we have this article from the Russian propagandists who are saying just because America put all these sanctions against Russia, they are the ones who are struggling the most. For example, do you know that the eggs in America are now so expensive that regular American citizens had to give them up in order to buy potatoes, which will be colored for the Easter egg hunt? And I mean, yes, you heard me right. There is no way I can come up with something as ridiculous as that. And let's give a very quick test here. If you are from America, can you please let us know in the comments if you indeed gave up eggs and started buying potatoes to color them as Easter eggs. But okay, now to a little bit more serious news. And so recently one of the main opposition guy in Russia, Alexey Navalny, he once again started feeling extremely bad in prison. There was even a suspicion that he might have been poisoned once again, because in the last 2 weeks alone he lost approximately 8 kilograms or 15 pounds of his weight, which was already not big enough. Then we have the updated statistics from the General Staff of Ukraine showing us that the number of Russian soldier eliminations has crossed 180,000 people, which is just absolutely mind-blowing number how much Putin is willing to sacrifice for his delusional ideas, since this number is more than all the previous wars Russia have been participating since the end of Second World War combined. Then we have another statistics, and this time is about Ukrainians. So approximately 1500 Ukrainians who are currently residing in Poland, who left Ukraine after the beginning of this war, they were asked if they are planning to come back to their motherland. And long story short, only 55% of Ukrainians are planning to go back to Ukraine, while the rest 38% are planning to continue living in Poland, and the rest 7% are thinking to move to another country. And now just a couple more words about the Western support to Ukraine before we talk about the update from the south and why Russians are getting so cautious and defensive in this region. And guess what? There is a reason. In this first video we can see the British self-propelled artillery system called AS-90, which is already being used by Ukrainians on the front lines. And second is the picture of an American armored combat vehicle, Oshkosh, which is also being used by Ukrainians as we speak. And so yes, you probably have heard that the Ukrainian counteroffensive will now be a little bit delayed, maybe maximum month or two, but this does not mean that this is not happening. And by the way, we will talk about this particular topic in more details very soon. And obviously, the Ukrainian counteroffensive will be the major center topic for my videos as soon as it starts happening, so if you don't want to miss any of these updates as soon as they start happening, please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. You can also follow my second channel, The Russian Dude Clips, where I post under 1-minute summaries every single day. The link will be down below. Alright, and now as promised, let's talk about the situation in the south of Ukraine. And first of all, according to the local invading authorities in Crimean Peninsula, the peninsula will not be doing these victory parades or any other celebrations on May 9th. And to be honest, this is not the very first time we hear something like this, because previously pretty much the same announcement have been made from other neighboring regions in Russia, such as for example Belgorod. Then we have another report by the General Staff of Ukraine, which claims that Russian occupying authorities in Kherson and in Zaporozhye regions are planning to evacuate civilians, specifically from the settlements very close to the front lines. As for now, this forced evacuation is only voluntarily, but then approximately by the end of April it is supposed to become mandatory. And more or less similar reports come to us from the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, located near Enerhodar, where Russian authorities are evacuating their employees on this power plant station, the ones which are working on Rosatom. And ultimately, according to the British intelligence, Russians are fortifying their defense positions in the south, specifically around Melitopol, where they already built 3 lines of defenses. Reportedly, the very first line of defense is not going to be as protected as the second or the third. And most likely, just like they did in the past, Russians will be using the fresh conscripts in the first line of defense, because they are not the soldiers. Unfortunately, Russian army is being afraid or scared to lose, and the main purpose of this will be just to face the very first waves of Ukrainian attacks. But the other 2 lines of defenses, the ones which are in close proximity to Melitopol, are reportedly already pretty fortified. And one of such famous defense structures, which Russians already have in the Zaporozhye region, is this continuous 70 kilometers trench, which goes to approximately 1/3 of the entire Zaporozhye region. And if you want to see it for yourself how it looks, I have the photos and the satellite images of this giga trench on my Patreon. The link will be down below. Alright, and now let's talk about some very interesting things from the east of Ukraine, because recently Russians got pushed further away from Bakhmut city center. But first of all, according to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, Russians continue to hold their positions next to Kupiansk front line, and this time it's a little bit different. As a result of their most recent attack, they were able to make small gains to the south of Kreminna. And then we go to Bakhmut itself, where according to Ukrainian sources, heavy fighting continues inside the city, and this western road, which goes from Bakhmut to Ivanovsky, is still under the control by Ukrainians. But at the same time, we have pretty different and untrustworthy reports from the Russian side. For example, according to Denis Pushilin, Russia has already captured all the administrative buildings inside Bakhmut. But then, according to the Ministry of Defense of Russia, Wagner was able to advance inside Bakhmut city and capture 3 blocks. And yes, you heard me right. The Ministry of Defense of Russia, almost for the very first time, acknowledged the existence of Wagner. And while it might sound good on the paper and for the Russian propagandists, if we take a look at this map which shows us the changes in territorial control, in fact, we can see that Russians got pushed further away from the city center. Without a doubt, Bakhmut still stands, and all these Russian claims that they're able to capture this or capture that is pretty much exactly what they used to do in the past, whenever they were trying to capture some other significant cities, and they started celebrating way too early. And we already know how it all ended. And by the way, recently I received a combat footage from the inside of Bakhmut, where Ukrainian special forces, Wolves of Da Vinci, are repelling a Russian attack. Unfortunately, I'm not able to show the entire video on YouTube, but if you want to see the full version with sounds, in addition to all the other uncensored materials, I uploaded to my Patreon. There's still 1 week of free trial and the link is down below. And ultimately, Ukrainians were able to destroy a Russian artillery firing position to the south of Vasilievka, which as you can see is next to Avdiivka frontline. And so yes, even though the full-scale Ukraine counteroffensive unfortunately has not started yet, mainly due to this most recent leakage of Pentagon documents, which expose some problems with the Ukrainian air defense systems, but nevertheless it is still happening, because Ukrainians, as we speak, they probe the Russian defenses all around the front lines, specifically in the east of Ukraine. And one of their main activities that they're focusing on right now is the reconnaissance in force and using the drone to collect the intelligence data on the Russian forces, specifically their trenches and the minefields. And obviously, the main reason for this is to expose the weak spots in the Russian defenses before the actual counteroffensive, which as for now, as mentioned previously, is a little bit delayed, but no more for just a couple of weeks or a month, because unfortunately of a slowdown of Western support to Ukraine, the unfavorable weather conditions, and most importantly, the leakage of Pentagon documents. Because of this, the Ukrainian military leadership now has to adjust their military tactics, taking into consideration that Russia now has some sort of insight into Ukraine's defenses. But don't worry, the counteroffensive is obviously still happening. It is just that Ukraine wants to be 110% prepared, because in case this grand liberation begins and Ukraine will not be able to achieve any significant results, this will most likely motivate the citizens of Ukraine and most importantly the Western countries to force Ukraine into negotiations. I mean, just think about this. Everything that Ukrainian authorities have been speaking in the last several months is the upcoming counteroffensive and is that it will be successful. But what happens if they are only able to liberate a small part of their territory? Obviously, the Western countries will see it as a sign of weakness that they gave them so much military vehicles, ammunition and military support in general and are not able to achieve any significant results. And because of this, the Western politicians might force Zelensky and his team to have some sort of negotiations with Putin, which Zelensky obviously does not want to do under any circumstances. And that is exactly why Ukrainians decided to postpone a little bit their final and ultimate counteroffensive, and in the meantime they continue the training, they continue receiving Western military vehicles, and they continue to collect the intelligence data, because they want to be 110% sure that this counteroffensive is happening and it is going to be very successful. And just for example, according to the Prime Minister of Ukraine, Denis Shmyhal, the counteroffensive will start no later than in the beginning of summer. And even Zelensky himself at this point issues the final warning to the Russian soldiers. He is saying, you should leave our country right now when you still have a chance, or you will be eliminated. Zelensky says that Ukrainian people are the defenders of their own land, they have the modern Western equipment and their soldiers are properly trained, and they're just waiting for the right time to do the counteroffensive, which will be successful. He believes in this 100%. And whenever this counteroffensive happens, it will be fast and successful. That is why Ukrainians will be liberating their territories in big parts at once, and all the Russian soldiers still remaining on this will not be even asked politely to leave. They'll be just terminated. And because of this, the stalemate on the front lines and just overall extremely low morale of the Russian soldiers, who start to realize, what are we even doing in Ukraine? According to Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, the number of Russian soldiers calling the Ukrainian hotlines and asking how to properly surrender has pretty much skyrocketed. And for example, in March alone there were a total of more than 3,000 such requests of Russians trying to surrender, which is more than 2 to 3 times in comparison to all the previous months. And this is already happening even before the Ukrainian counteroffensive has been initiated. And so yes, if you don't want to miss this 100% upcoming Ukrainian counteroffensive, can you please subscribe to my channel? It only takes one click. And by the way, some of you might know that I extremely love hockey, and so I do have a friend who is working closely with the Hockey Hall of Fame. And if you're also one of hockey enjoyers, I have a very good opportunity for you to put your name in the Hockey Hall of Fame. So, what my friend does is that he collects all the archived hockey footage, photos and videos all around the world, starting as early as 1920s or maybe even before that, and then he either sends these videos and photos to the families of those hockey players who have never seen their grandparents play hockey, or he just sends them to Hockey Hall of Fame. And recently, NHL.com wrote the entire article about him and what he does, and I'll put this article linked down to the description. And long story short, if you have any archived footage, photos or videos, or even some hockey memorabilia from the old times, feel free to contact my friend, and potentially some of these things might end up in the Hockey Hall of Fame. My friend is saying thank you to every single one of you. Thank you so much. You can also support my channel financially, and the best way to do it will be through my Patreon, or you can just become my channel member and unlock exclusive badges, or just use my PayPal link. All these links to the right and down below. Thank you so much for your attention, товарищи, and see you tomorrow.